So, I'm gonna switch gears and talk about voting, right? We know that early voting is coming up for the November election, which will have constitutional amendments on it, which I think there are about 9 or 10. I don't have that list on me, but we can certainly provide you with just an analysis, like a nonpartisan analysis on what the supporters say, what the opposition says. In addition, for our area, of course, Arlington ISD has their bond, and then Tarrant County College District has a bond proposed as well, which I don't yet have kind of any substantive details on that, but we're scheduling a meeting so that we could learn more. But with voting is some time back, maybe it was a few months ago, we passed a resolution, or we voted to adopt what's called the vote center model. So right now, during early vote, you can go to any early vote location in the county and you can vote, right? So with the vote center model, you would be able to do the same thing on election day. And one, it's meant to increase voter turnout, and also over time, in the not so distant future, it would help to provide some cost saving measures, not just for the county. So the county is responsible for administering elections, for certain elections, and then obviously if it's a city election, or like during the primaries and the parties conduct those. But all in all, right, we provide the election equipment that entities or municipalities rent. So it's really important that we make sure that just as you're able to access the voting centers or the locations during early vote, now on election day, which we just got word, I guess last week, from the Secretary of State that our application was in fact, that it was approved. And about 3 weeks to a month ago, we purchased new election equipment. So I would suggest that it doesn't necessarily have to be before this election in November, but certainly leading up to the primary is we'll connect you with the proper person at the Elections Administration and have them come out to your meeting to give you a demonstration on the new equipment. But so the goal with the vote centers model, and also the goal with the new election equipment, which we hadn't purchased new equipment since 2005, is to make voting more convenient for voters and, of course, to increase civic engagement. And we made some of our decisions based off of a citizen advisory committee that was brought together in October of last year to look at the vote center model. So it was made up of representatives from each of the major parties in the county, and then also each of the commissioners and the tax assessor and the district clerk the county clerk made appointments to that. So it was a citizen advisory committee that they met fairly often over like a 6-month period and made a recommendation to us. So we certainly appreciate their service in that way. So I know that I've mentioned some of the elections that are coming up, and I know y'all obviously are a very active group, so you probably are already on it. But of course, if you have members of your family or community that are not yet registered to vote, want to make sure that you do that leading into this next election for sure. Somewhat to that end is that we're already having discussions about redistricting. Of course, we conduct the census every 10 years, and we have 2 local Tarrant County legislators who serve on that committee. The vice chair is State Representative Chris Turner, and then also Representative Matt Krause serves on that committee as well. So both of those members actually represent some part of Arlington, so I wanted to be sure to mention them. So I'm going to talk very briefly about the bond for JPS. And as I share with you all that I served as an EMT, so the area of healthcare could not be more critical and near and dear to my heart. And of course, access to quality, affordable healthcare is an issue. And it's extremely important, and it's as a county who has a public healthcare system, we have a responsibility to make sure that we're doing all that we can to provide that access for residents. So very quickly, the bond was a no tax rate increase bond, and it provided funds for a new mental health and behavioral health hospital, a day surgery center, a new oncology center, which we were able to not build that brand new, but we were able to lease space, which to the tune of about $8.8 million, but it was slated in the bond for about $25 million, so we were able to already have some savings recovery there. A construction of additional clinics, or neighborhood medical homes, what we're calling them, the newest of which was built in Northeast Tarrant County, Commissioner Ficus's district. I believe it's in Hearst, and that will kind of serve as a model. So it's essentially a one-stop shop from pediatrics to geriatrics, where you can go to receive preventative health care, dentistry, visit an optometrist. So it's a really great model. Today we actually had a joint board meeting with the hospital district board and the commissioner's court to talk about where we are and the next steps of planning for the, some of the aspects of the bond that I discussed. And so we'll definitely be sure to provide you all with regular updates. I think Vanna may have a sign-up sheet for you all to provide your email addresses, or what we can do is provide the updates, email them to you, you can share them with the group, whichever it is that you would prefer, on any of these issues that we're talking about. Then I want to make sure that we keep you all updated on that. I don't know that I have time to get more into this larger issue, because I do want to make sure that we have time for questions. So how are we on time?
Take time.
Okay, very good. One other point that I wanted to mention about the JPS bond is that I and other members of the court will be hosting regular community updates. I want to make sure we provide those substantive updates to everyone, but in the meantime, you can visit yes2jps.org. It's a website that will have information on kind of the progress, where we are with the implementation of the bond. And I will say that, we are still some ways off, right? And with any bond project, you want to see shovels in the ground and dirt turning as soon as you can, and I certainly support that. But this is a critical time for our county, and we want to make sure that with taxpayer resources, you all supported the bond, that we're moving forward in a way that obviously is efficient, and that we are good stewards of the opportunity that you all have provided us. So I think we're all chomping at the bit. We want to make sure that we're doing as much as we can, as fast as we can. Certainly that commitment is there, but we want to make sure that we do it in a way that's smart. So the last big issue that I'm going to touch base on is criminal justice reform. So Tarrant County has learned from some other counties across the nation, even here in our state, about what's called pretrial release. So Harris County and some other counties were sued in recent years because their pretrial release process was seen as unconstitutional. So basically that means if I were to be arrested for committing a crime, and I go to the county jail, but I have not yet had my day in court, but I'm not a flight risk. Let's say it's for a nonviolent offense. I'm not a flight risk, but I can't afford to bond out, or I can't afford the bill that a judge has set, and that means that I sit there until I have my day in court. And so we're in 18 months, we're about 18 months into the process of evaluating our what's called a pretrial release process, because we know that actually setting a bond actually does not guarantee someone to show up for court. So there's obviously a huge debate nationally between, was this really pretrial release or pretrial detention? So why does that matter? Why should that matter to all of us? One is that our criminal justice system is set on the principle that you are innocent until proven guilty. Two, our own constitution, our state constitution, says that individuals arrested should be bailable, should receive a bail amount that is not excessive beyond their economic needs. Three, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, or Federal Appellate Court, said that what Harris County did, basically they went off of the fee schedule. And so that court ruled that what Harris County was doing was unconstitutional. That's actually been what many states, many counties have done for years, for about 40, 50 years, this cash bond system. That particular court is considered one of the most conservative of the 13 appellate courts in the nation. To put it in context, in the last 25 years in the state of Texas, that our jail population has gone from 25% of people who are waiting for their day in court to about 75% of people who are waiting for their day in court. So it's a complex issue. It takes our judges, it takes our sheriff, our jail administrators, it takes our district attorney, it takes everyone to be working on this process, which thankfully Tarrant has not been sued, and I hope and pray that we're not. I think, one, we should do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, but then also I would hate for example, like with Harris County, which is one of their lawsuits, $9 million later, they still end up doing what the court said that they had to do, with the court ruling, not their commissioner's court, but what the court ruling said that they had to do. So if we know that it's the right thing to do, and we know that we should do it with some expediency to avoid being sued. And I want to be very clear here that I'm totally supportive of, if you are a violent criminal, and if the judge or risk assessment, kind of all of the factors that come into play to say that this person belongs in jail, then you should stay in jail. But there are nonviolent offenders, people who are low risk to themselves or to the community, that the only reason why they're sitting in jail is because they can't afford the bill that was set. So this is a really long process. Again, I'm sure that we're about 18 months into it, and it's gonna take some time. We still have some pretty substantive milestones to reach. But just Saturday, a few weeks ago, after visiting with the Pantego Lions Club, I went down to the county jail to visit with one of the local magistrate judges to observe his docket. And I'm working with this and other issues to have the best understanding that I can about what this looks like day to day for folks, what's the best way for us to be using county resources, and how can we do better in areas where we certainly have the opportunity and what I see as a responsibility to do. So just before I move on to receiving any questions from you all, I want to be sure to recognize Vonna No, who's our community outreach coordinator. And so we've got our administrative team and our garage team that I mentioned, so that's about 40 or so folks that work for me, and then it's similar with the other commissioners. But whether it's that you stay in contact with a staff member, or if you email me and want to sit down and meet about an issue that's of concern to you, I know I met with Elva and her team some time back to talk about some issues, but I want to make sure that I stay in contact with everyone, so you can call us, you can email us. Vaughn will be sure to pass out my business cards. On the back of the card is contact information for Elizabeth Maldonado. She handles scheduling for our office. And then, of course, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. Try to make sure that we share not only what we're doing in the community, but then also what we're doing within county government. I think it's probably one of the least understood levels of government. But obviously it has huge implications in some of those areas that I touched on today. And then, of course, our county court, our commissioner's court meets every Tuesday. So we had a meeting earlier today. Every Tuesday, 10 a.m. downtown at the county administration building on Weatherford, downtown Fort Worth. The meetings start at 10. A meeting can be anywhere from 30 minutes to 7 hours long. You never know. It depends on what's on the agenda, how many folks attend to speak on the issue, which I say the more the merrier. I think we should be making sure that we're making these decisions considering as many perspectives as possible. And of course, you can view the meetings online. If you go to tarrantcounty.com, and it has a little button where you can click on Commissioner's Court. And our Commissioner Court meetings, those are live. Some of the other committee meetings with the court or even with the hospital district, those are generally recorded and then they're posted at a later time. So with that, I've talked far too long, but I want to make sure that I answer any questions that you have. Yes.
Could you talk about the census just for a minute?
Oh, yes, thank you so much. And I had that right here on my list. Okay. So we're working in partnership with some of our cities in precinct 2, but certainly for the county, to build awareness about the census. So the census obviously occurs every 10 years, and it's really important not just for our state, but for our county, that we make sure that everyone gets counted. Now, obviously, that there are some representation implications to it. We're poised to gain an additional congressional seat. California is poised to lose one, right? We're getting Californians to move to Texas, and some of everybody's moving to Texas. But we have to make sure that people get counted. So it matters when it comes down to representation, and how many members of Congress that we have. And then also, it certainly matters when we talk about the drawing down of federal dollars. There are about 16 or so segments of the federal budget that are directly related to the census count. So I don't have the exact number, but to quote the state demographer, in terms of our undercount, that it equates to, for each one of us, that equates to about $1,000 every year for 10 years that we would get from the federal government. So it's give or take. Again, not an exact figure, but you think about the projection for growth for the state. So right now we're about 29 million. By 2050, that number is expected to double. So it matters now that everyone gets counted. So then 10, 20, 30 years from now, that we, see some of the value of that growth. And of course, we have major issues facing us as a state, and that affects what we do and don't do at the county, to the city, the school district, you name it. So we are going to be working on an awareness and marketing campaign from the county, just to help to get the word out. And I know that obviously Arlington has a very strong complete count committee, as does Mansfield, Grand Prairie. The challenge will be in some of the what are considered hard to count communities, which in that also involves seniors. It involves some communities who perhaps English is not their first language. It involves children. Believe it or not, some people forget to actually count their children. And then also with some of the smaller cities within our county who, just capacity-wise, they may not be able to form a complete count committee or to devote a certain amount of their budget to the count. So it's a priority for us, and it literally is an all hands on deck. So not just for government, but it should be important for business. It should be important, for all the aspects of the private sector, because when you look at how some economic development decisions are made, they're based off of who lives in the area, what's the median income. So it has ramifications that are pretty far-reaching. Yeah.
And the last I heard, the citizenship question had not been answered for sure. Has that been settled?
So it will not be. On
them?
Right. So
Okay.
there was a court ruling that it will not be on the census. So you will start to see in your community, in your various neighborhoods, folks that are maybe reconfirming addresses, like these are folks that works for the Census Bureau. And then at some future point, the goal is, one of the big things this year is that it's moving to being online. So not that you won't still get a paper census to complete, but the goal is you complete it online. If you don't complete it online, then you get it in paper. If you don't complete it on paper, then you would get a visit by a census enumerator. And so in previous years, because it was all done on paper, then an enumerator could come visit your home, 5+ times. Now it's 3 passes. So it's really important, especially for, and it's a pretty diverse community that may not want to complete their census online, may not be comfortable with it, may not have the technology access to it, that at least they know that they will get the census in the mail and that they should complete it. Otherwise, someone's gonna come knocking on the door. So, yeah. Yes?
We all know mental illness is a drain on society as well as our police departments. And it's my understanding that whenever our police department encounters a person that they think is mentally ill, they have to take them all the way into Fort Worth to JPS.
Yeah, to our
And sit
psychiatric
with them for about
emergency
8 hours, 2 officers. With the growth in the southeast part of Tarrant County, is there something in the works or the plan to have something closer so that we can utilize our resources from the city standpoint a little bit better?
Sure, that's a great question. Just yesterday, I went to visit our psychiatric emergency center that is downtown in the main campus for JPS, or our hospital system. Now, there's discussion about, right now, that's on the 10th floor. So, which means that if I had a family member and they needed emergency psychiatric help, I could take them, or if the law enforcement community were to encounter them, then they could. And of course, as you would imagine, obviously with Arlington and Fort Worth being the 2 largest cities, those are the 2 police departments that visit the psychiatric center to drop off folks in the highest numbers. So in our discussions about the neighborhood medical homes, we were talking about making sure that behavioral service is part of that. One is somewhat on the prevention end, but you know, if you ask our executive vice president with JPS who's over behavioral mental health, she'll tell you that it's important to have some type of urgent or psychiatric care component as a part of that, which is important. Now, but the main hospital will, the emergency psychiatric hospital will always, it'll be there. There's discussion about bringing it instead to the 10th floor, down to the ground floor, and then making sure that there's protocols in place to where our law enforcement community can spend more time getting back out in the community and protecting us, and not, you know, waiting at the hospital downtown.
Well, you see how that's important.
Oh, it's hugely important. It's hugely important. I mean, and even when there was discussion throughout the county about what's really important with this bond, I don't care where you were in the county, mental health, behavioral health services, increasing access to them, that was the #1 issue. So, and we do hear that loud and clear, and want to make sure as we implement the bond, that in as many ways as possible, that we are keeping that in mind and factoring that into how we integrate with other healthcare services.
Because I serve on the joint council for JPS, so I go to quarterly meetings there that Robert Early leads.
Yes.
And he talks about this a lot. In the bond package, they're going to build a whole new tower for behavioral health. But right now, it's really tricky to admit somebody through ER that may be combative and out of control and fighting and whatever, and trying to get them up to the 10th, to another building and up to the 10th floor.
So
And
right now, even if you were to, if I had a family member that I, you know, wanted to be sure that was seen, who was in some type of behavioral health distress, I had to go to the 10th floor, I kind of get buzzed in, then I have a conversation, like just kind of an initial triage, and then that family member would be sent back to be evaluated, and then that's done within a certain amount of time, and let's say that it's deemed that they need inpatient care. So then that family member would have to go from the 10th floor of the main hospital